Okay. Today we're going to be learning about the preterite versus the imperfect. I'm going to start by talking about the preterite. The preterite is considered as a moment in time, or maybe like a photo, as you see here. Now, when I say a moment in time, that means a distinct moment in time, or like, for example, yesterday, last year, the other day, or suddenly. These are some words in Spanish that are clues for this moment in time sort of thing. So it's a clear, defined moment in time. Last year seemed like a fairly big moment in time, but at least it's clear defined. It has a definite beginning and an end. Now, as we come to the next point for the preterite, you see that the beginning or end of something is also a preterite, because the beginning or end is usually a moment in time. For example, I have the phrase over here to the side, empezó a llover. It began to rain. Now, if I said it was raining, that'd be a different thing, but it began to rain. The starting point would be that. Okay. Now, when you talk about preterite versus imperfect, sometimes you have to have both in the same sentence. For example, you might have a preterite action that interrupts an ongoing imperfect event. I'll give you that phrase in English. We'll come back to this one later. But, for example, if I said, when I left the house, it was raining. Well, when I left the house, that's a moment in time. You could take a picture of me leaving the house. But it was raining, we don't know the beginning or end of that. It was raining before I knew about it, and I came out, I'm in the middle of that somewhere. So the preterite action of me leaving the house interrupted that ongoing raining event, that ongoing imperfect event. Now, when you get to narratives are just stories. The main character in your narrative, their actions will have preterite verbs. But the background and the setting will be the imperfect. So that's the opposite of this one. Now, in this last point, here are some verbs that have unusual meanings in the preterite. You have the verb saber, that means to find out something as opposed to knowing it. You have conocer, which means to meet someone instead of knowing someone. You have querer and poder, that both sort of mean to try as opposed to wanting or being able. So they all have specific meanings in the preterite. Now, we talked about the preterite just a moment ago, and now we're going to talk about the imperfect, and we're going to compare one with the other. Okay, now, whereas the preterite was a moment in time or a photo, the imperfect, the one we're doing now, is over and over in the past or ongoing in the past. Repetition or ongoing in the past. And that's more like a movie or a series of pictures. One picture for the preterite versus a series of pictures for the imperfect. Our second point are clue words that would bring on or describe that moment in time, not the moment in time, but the ongoing or the repetition. For example, every day, cada dia would be each day, every day, all the years or every year, siempre. Those are clue words that what you're dealing with is an imperfect action as opposed to a preterite action. It's something that happened over and over or something that was ongoing in the past. Now, whereas the preterite was the beginning or end of something, as in empezó a llover, it began to rain, the imperfect has no definite beginning or end. You come in the middle of something. The example I gave a moment ago, when I left the house, it was raining. When I came into the house, or when I left the house, the rain had already started. I didn't know when it started. It hasn't ended yet, so I'm somewhere in the middle of that. Another phrase that might be something similar, we were eating when the phone rang. The eating was ongoing, and the phone ringing interrupted that ongoing event, the eating. Or maybe, when I got on the bus, it was full of people. The preterite event is me getting on the bus. You can take a picture of that. But the bus being full of people didn't magically happen the moment I stepped up. It was full before I got there. How long it had been full, I don't know. I don't know when that started. And it hasn't ended yet. Someone else needs to get off for that to end, and it won't be full anymore. But for now, we're in the middle of that. We're not the beginning or the end. We're somewhere in the middle. So that's what makes the bus being full an imperfect event. And in point 4, we're talking about that very thing. Ongoing imperfect event interrupted by preterite actions. And we'll come back to that again in a moment once we finish the points here. The number 5 point I alluded to earlier. When you have the preterite actions, that's the main character or maybe the secondary characters, but the background and the setting in a story or narrative will be the imperfect. Now, a moment ago, our last point was some verbs that have odd meanings in the preterite. The comparison point to that here for the imperfect is a group of things that are usually an imperfect verb. For example, if I'm describing something, if I'm a witness to a crime and the police interview me and ask for a description of what happened or who was involved, I would use imperfect verbs to describe that. If I'm talking about someone's age, that would be an imperfect verb. If I'm talking about time, if they might say, "Cuando ocurrió?" When did it happen? And I would say, "Eran las dos." It was at 2. The time verb would be the imperfect, eran las dos. And then also, emotions. They are usually imperfect verbs. Notice that these 4 categories have the helpful acronym DATE. So that helps you remember all these little things that are rolled together in this one point. Descriptions, age, time, or time and date, and emotions. Okay, now, we're talking about ongoing imperfect actions that interrupt preterite events, or vice versa, ongoing imperfect events interrupted by preterite actions. Let me give an example of these. I have 3 sentences here. Cuando salí de la casa estaba lloviendo. When I left the house, my preterite action, that preterite action interrupted this ongoing event, the fact that it was raining. I referred to that earlier. The next one. When I got on the bus, cuando subí al autobús, preterite verb, that's the action that interrupted the ongoing imperfect event. The bus was being full of people. The third one, we were eating when the phone rang. This time the phone rang is my preterite event that interrupted the ongoing imperfect action or imperfect event over here, the fact that we were eating. And here you see I have the imperfect verb, whereas here is a preterite verb.